question. So the question here, of course, is can they sit through this? Most of these high-profile cases is how much do you know about the case? Can you put that aside? But this one is a much more complicated one. Again, it's a de facto reason of insanity, which also rarely wins, so very complicated. Many jurors came through. We'll see how they hold up during this trial. We have 18 that they picked.
Wow, no kidding. Okay, Sue O'Connell, on a very busy day, thank you very much for being there for us. If you or someone you know is in crisis, you can call or text 988 or text HOME to the crisis text line at 741-741. Coming up from us, the messy scene on one Ohio highway, what took crews hours to clean up. Plus, is LeBron James the NBA's version of Taylor Swift? The Easter eggs. So you know, NBC News covers hundreds of stories each day. It's pretty tough to read, to watch, to listen to everything. So our bureau teams have selected it for you and for me. These are the highlights. This is what's going down in the regions. We call it the local. From our Northeast Bureau, New York City police are on the hunt for a man who allegedly attacked someone with a meat cleaver. Law enforcement says the victim was gashed multiple times after a road rage incident. He was taken to the hospital, expected to be okay. From our Western Bureau, a tense scene in Arizona. Take a listen as a mother calls 911, calling for help for her 3-year-old child.
My boyfriend fired off into the wall at my house. My 3-year-old son is there. I'm not though.
Newly released body cam video shows the moment SWAT officers stormed the house. Gilbert police say the 40-year-old suspect refused to surrender. Thankfully, nobody injured, and the man is facing multiple charges. From our Midwest Bureau, a truck accident in Ohio created quite a pickle, literally today. You might call it kosher chaos. Hundreds of pickles, jars of pickles, smashed along the side of the highway. Ohio's DOT says it took hours to clean it all up. Drivers just had to deal with it. Sorry. All right, now to the will he or won't he that has really got the NBA asking when already. And we're talking about who else but the king, LeBron James, who more than 3 weeks ago, as you know, went into free agency, still hasn't made up his mind about where he'll play next. It's all part of the play James has been running for years as he wraps the sports world around his finger, just as he has for pretty much his whole career. NBC's Dana Griffin has the breakdown.
A man known for dramatic decisions both on the court and off it.
In this form, we'll take my talents to South Beach.
Suddenly can't seem to make up his mind.
LeBron James has informed the Los Angeles Lakers that he is moving on.
LeBron James, basketball's GOAT for many, 4-time MVP, 4-time champion, the league's all-time leading scorer. Now not sure where he'll play his 24th season. His agent and longtime friend Rich Paul saying LeBron will not be rushed.
We're not making this about attention and a spectacle. It's not about a decision or anything like that. He has a choice to make.
LeBron has had quicker free agency decisions in the past. In 2010, it took 1 week after free agency started. LeBron picked Miami with that flashy ESPN special.
You ready to go, LeBron? Where's the powder?
10 days to pick Cleveland in 2014, spotlighted in a Sports Illustrated feature titled, I'm Coming Home. Just 16 hours to go to LA in 2018. But now,
safety, they do some shooting, they do some schmoozing.
How often do you come to practice?
I come here once a month.
You do?
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I was really surprised by who showed up. It was a mix of young professionals.
I'm not a big gun guy. I'm actually here because I'm learning, so I don't really know much about guns.
There were retirees.
I don't want to shoot anybody, okay? I want to get enough stuff in place so that's the actual last thing.
There was a Catholic mom of 2 Jewish kids.
You have to do what you feel is necessary to protect your family.
Many of them gun skeptics, gun shy Jewish Americans who never imagined they would have or want to have a gun.
Our members, over 60% of them have never held a firearm before. That has changed drastically. We are not the weak. We are not defenseless. Our kids are training, our grandparents are training, and Bubby carries now.
but looking for some sort of basic entry-level introduction to firearms because of what they say is really an unprecedented threat picture, at least how they feel it right now.
And with any story about self-defense, the question is always whether you're making people feel safer by having a gun or whether you are making people safer by having more guns in the room. I guess, how do these people feel? How do congregations feel?
Absolutely. I mean, that is sort of a conundrum, right? I mean, is this a psychological? How much of this is a psychological benefit, reassurance? How much of it is a practical benefit?
Any concern that arming average people, putting more gun owners in places like a synagogue, actually creates a new risk?
Not if it's done correctly. There's a risk everywhere. Unfortunately, the bad guys, the monsters, they don't let you know when they're going to attack. You might not be able to escape. That's when that tool and proper weapons training, that's the equalizer.
Gail Perlstein approached the NRA for some help. They're providing a limited amount of in-kind support in terms of shooting facilities and trainers.
And I simply looked her in the eye and I said, yes, yes, and yes.
The NRA says this is a really important partnership for them as they begin to emerge from the scandals of financial mismanagement and plunging membership of really the past few years from former CEO Wayne LaPierre.
Well, and let's talk more about that because you actually spoke to the new NRA president in what was, I think, his first network TV interview for this piece. So I guess what does he think about this effort? I guess why is he talking about this in particular? Because like you said, the group has gone through a lot of controversy in the last several years.
I think it's a sign of this new regime.
You had a handful of executives that made some poor decisions, but you can't take 155 years and millions of members and literally hundreds of NRA staffers. I call us the good guys.
They also say they're trying to get back to basics. It was a group founded after the Civil War to promote firearm safety.
We're getting more involved now than ever before in education and training, competitive shooting, our youth programs.
If a Muslim American group came to you and said, we're feeling threatened at our places of worship, will you partner with us?
Absolutely. And there was anything that I could do and the National Rifle Association could do to support the Muslim American community, yes, we would.
But also took some tough questions about, why guns really are the answer.
It's our Second Amendment right. It's one of the things that makes our country unique, the ability to be able to protect our home, our families, our businesses, and our places of worship.
And insisting, as is not surprising, that so much of being a gun owner is individual responsibility, and not everybody is on board with that. In the Jewish community, there's one prominent example. Brad, the deadliest attack on Jews in U.S. history happened, almost a decade ago at the Tree of Life Synagogue outside Pittsburgh. 11 people killed there.
Our sanctuaries is no longer usable. I can't tell you how many bullet holes are there. Hundreds.
One of the families of the victims in that shooting actually sued the NRA, accused them of complicity in that attack because of the group's rhetoric. They accused them, quote, of valorizing gun use and vilifying disfavored groups. The case was settled, but it very much remains a sentiment that a lot of people have about the NRA.
The NRA goes out and says, everybody get your guns before they take our guns. It just creates this cycle of panic feeling that if I don't have a gun, then I'm not protected.
I also spoke, Brad, with the former FBI supervisory special agent who responded that day, Sean Brokaw.
If a bad guy walks in the door, how are you going to react in training that first before you even think about getting a weapon?
She is still involved with protecting the Jewish community in the Pittsburgh area. And she says, look, she understands why people may turn to guns at a time of fear.
They run, hide, and then fight.
But really cautions against going down that route for a number of reasons, including very serious liability issues for an individual, not to mention the safety issues for all of us in our places of worship.
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating scenes, though. And regardless of what you think of gun ownership in this country, I mean, the phenomenon is real of these groups feeling the need to sort of band together and learn how to use firearms together. Devin Dwyer, really great reporting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad.
And one last thing. Today is a tough day for the Start Here team because a key member of the production staff, Kelly Tare, is moving on to a new gig. And besides yours truly, Kelly has been part of more podcast episodes than anyone else at ABC, which might make you wonder, what do the producers on this show even do?
This is very surreal.
Yes, I know. This is your exit interview, Ms. Therese.
This is your life. Kelly was there year one when we started this podcast, helping with bookings and odd jobs that needed doing. Then she started working on the show full-time. She leaves as our supervising producer, which means she knows all the secrets of how to make a daily podcast. Secrets I don't even know. What is it you do?
Doing nothing. Just waiting for your greatness to just spill over onto the page.
If it does, it changes the game.
See, this is a good tip already. Communication. For some, that includes flattery. For others, it requires directness. Kelly, you might not know, is often the person in my ear saying, "Oh, press in on that," or "Wait, did she say the quotes we needed to hear?" How much would you say of a given segment is just like a magically spontaneous, brilliant, perfect conversation?
You know what? I would say it runs 50-50.
Sometimes she has to remove an exchange for time and clarity, but more often she's finding the added sound that she helped make a signature of the show. In fact, every new hire on Start Here goes through what we started calling the Kelly Therese Academy. That, of course, is now about to go away. I'm not going to have KTA anymore, but the least I could do is pass along some of its institutional knowledge. Lesson 1. A good chat is not necessarily good storytelling. Storytelling comes from fact-based journalism, along with the archival bites, the music, the pauses, and tension.
My favorite part of doing the show is the moment after an interview that we do, and I have this just blank canvas to paint a picture with audio.
Lesson 2, the news doesn't stop. I have an alert on my phone that allows it to ring, even when it's on Do Not Disturb, if it's Kelly who's calling.
We're all in the trenches together every night.
Lesson 3, if you're not sure how to pronounce something, don't guess. Like if Kelly doesn't know the name of a town that we're reporting on, she won't just find YouTube videos of it, she will call City Hall.
You say Vegas really weird.
In Las Vegas, I know.
Vegas.
And this brings me to lesson 4. Know thy host. Try to get the best out of him, no matter how limited he is. What are the habits that, like, you notice that, like, maybe I don't notice?
Okay, well, one of them is sometimes, Brad, you will have a dry mouth when you record, and I start hearing your mouth clicks, and it drives me up the wall.
If you're a really good producer, you'll even edit those noises out for the sake of your listeners. And in Kelly's opinion, that's who it should be about. Not her, not us, you, the listener. So, there you have it, Kelly Therese, successors of the future. There are more lessons out there, but those would conflict with the ultimate rule, keep this show to a reasonable length. We're all still in denial. We're going to show up on Monday, assuming she will be in the chair. Huge thank you to Kelly from our entire team, especially from yours truly as she moves into the next chapter of her career. Start Here is produced by Kelly Therese, Jen Newman, Anthony Ali, Aaron Ferrer, and Emily Schutz. Ariel Chester is our social media producer. Josh Cohan is director of podcast programming. I'm our managing editor. Thanks to John Newman, Tara Gimbel, Eamon McNiff, and Katie Dendos. Special thanks this week to Trevor Hastings, Nick Kerr, and Eric Strauss. I'm Brad Milkey. See you next week.
How are you thinking of ending it?
Not advice, but like here's an Easter egg. Here's an inside secret you should know about the show.
investigation, why she says the public's heard so few details about the case. And a seaplane crashed off the coast of Washington State. Video shows the plane skimming across the ocean, slamming into rocks and bursting into flames. How all 11 people on board made it out alive. And Jimothy is becoming the viral sensation of the summer. How companies are cashing in on the raccoon taking over the internet. But first, President Trump is threatening a major escalation in the war with Iran.
Único parece una palabra malgastada así, pero Bitaco necesita usarla, porque Bitaco es único. El único té que le dijo no a lo establecido y decidió crecer en un bosque de niebla andino, colombiano. El único que recibe neblina constante que crece lento como su entorno, que se nutre de suelo volcánico, único, sí. El único que goza, celebra, se nutre de las maravillas del bosque de niebla, un ecosistema vulnerable que depende de todos nosotros para permanecer. Un bosque que se convierte en una taza de té para animarte, calmarte, reconfortarte. Un té que no sabe como ningún otro, único, tan único como el bosque de niebla que lo acoge.
And less than 24
Bitaco,
hours after
el té
announcing
del
a
bosque de
landmark
niebla.
agreement with Saudi Arabia, allowing them to develop a civilian nuclear
Bueno,
energy
un día sin
program
comer
and
tampoco mata a
possibly
nadie.
enrich uranium. The president is now dramatically changing the terms with a new
Chacas,
condition that
solo
could
faltan
put
como
the entire
10
deal
cuadros.
out of reach. Trump saying it
No,
is
no, no.
totally
Yo ya aprendí
subject to
mejorarme
Saudi
mi mercado por
Arabia
Rappi
joining the
y llega
very
en minutos, solo
respected and
programo y me llega a la puerta de la
successful
casa.
Abraham Accords.
Haz mercado sin salir, sin estrés y con ofertas todos los días.
Saudi Arabia to normalize diplomatic relations with Israel.
Attacks against U.S. assets in Kuwait. The strikes continuing as President Trump now threatens a major escalation in the war, telling Axios he's considering a massive attack bigger than ever before, saying the U.S. is prepared and that he's close to making a decision.
We want to get it over with, and we want to do it right.
Thank you.
Sources tell ABC News one option under consideration is a return to the kind of full-scale strikes seen in the opening days of the war. The conflict is already expanding, with Iranian-backed Houthi rebels attacking 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea, choking another key waterway. Trump claims that Iran wants to come back to the table, but that he's not yet willing to negotiate, saying they haven't received enough pain yet. And less than 24 hours after announcing a landmark agreement with Saudi Arabia, allowing them to develop a civilian nuclear energy program and possibly enrich uranium. The president is now dramatically changing the terms, with a new condition that could put the entire deal out of reach. Trump saying it is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the very respected and successful Abraham Accords. But that remains highly unlikely. It would require Saudi Arabia to normalize diplomatic relations with Israel, something they have refused to do unless Israel commits to a Palestinian state.
And Iran is now out with a stark new warning, telling civilians in countries hosting U.S. military personnel to stay at least 500 meters from any building suspected of housing American forces.
Decide to close Bab el-Mandeb altogether. That would
And a new
obviously have
oil
a
choke point
tremendous
is
impact
emerging
on
in
the
the Red
global economy.
Sea.
It
More
could
than
push oil
10% of the
prices
world's oil
up to
supply flows
$150
through
a
the
barrel
Bab el-Mandeb
or more,
Strait.
according to
Now
some
the
analysts
Houthi
that we've spoken
blockade,
to
there's
about the
compounding the
worst-case
global
scenario
energy
here. So
crisis.
this is a very,
ABC's
very
Matt
fraught
Rivers is
moment
in
here
Jordan with more on
along
that.
the Red
Matt?
Sea. Back to you.
Hey there,
Matt
so we're
Rivers, thank
alongside
you.
the Red Sea,
Let's
and
bring
what
ABC
really is
contributor
shaping
and
up
former
to be
Deputy
yet
Assistant
another
Secretary of
front in
Defense for
this
the Middle East,
ongoing
Nick
conflict
Mulroy,
between
for more.
Iran and the United
Nick, so
States, and
President
yet
Trump's
this new
strategy
front
appears
could
to be
have
to
a
keep
massive
bombing Iran until
impact
he gets
on
what
the
he
global
wants. Do you
economy
think that's
as we
gonna
watch
work?
this all play out. Multiple Saudi oil
So, Diane,
tankers
it's hard to
have
see
been
if we keep
targeted
doing the
recently
same
in the Red
type of
Sea by the
bombing for that
Houthis
to
in
work.
Yemen. That's
Obviously,
the
we've done around
Iranian-backed
16,000
rebel group
strikes,
there.
but
Part
they
of
were
what that group is calling a
against
maritime
military targets, and
embargo
that was the
on
point,
Saudi
to
Arabia.
degrade
President
their
Trump responded saying if
strategic
they do this
military
again,
capacity. But I
the
think
U.S.
right
will
now
hold
we're gonna
Iran
see a
responsible.
shift.
Now, we've been
Yes,
talking
we'll
about the
still
Strait of
go after
Hormuz
military
for
targets,
months,
but
but
also
less so
the
about a strait called Bab
supporting
el-Mandeb,
targets,
right at the southern tip of the
that
Red
are
Sea,
really
just off
necessary,
the coast
like
of
the
Yemen.
railroad,
10 to 12% of all
be able to
global
continue
shipping
their
goes through
trade,
that
to be
strait
able to
each
sell
year, and
their
crucially,
oil,
since
which
the
is how
start
they
of this
get most of
conflict,
their,
Saudi Arabia has been
resources to
rerouting
run the
much of its
regime.
oil exports
That's where I
through
think
Bab
the
el-Mandeb
focus is going to
instead
start
of the Strait of
shifting
Hormuz. That's
to
in
put
part
that
helped oil
stranglehold on
prices
them
from
to really
going
make
even
something
higher than they would have
consequential to them,
otherwise.
which is,
The real fear
the
now is what
money that they
happens
use to
if
keep
the
the
Houthis,
IRGC
at
going.
Iran's direction,
Nick, how
decide to close Bab el-Mandeb altogether. That would
actor in
obviously have a tremendous impact on the global economy. It could push oil prices up to $150 a barrel or more, according to some analysts that we've spoken to about the worst case scenario here. So this is a very, very fraught moment here along the Red Sea. Back to you.
Matt Rivers, thank you. Let's bring in ABC contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy, for more. Hi, Mick. So President Trump's strategy appears to be to keep bombing Iran until he gets what he wants. Do you think that's going to work?
Will be what everybody's talking about, but
So Diane, it's hard to see if we keep doing the same type of bombing for that to work. Obviously, we've done around 16,000 strikes, but they were primarily against military targets, and that was the point, to degrade their strategic military capacity. But I think right now we're going to see a shift. Yes, we'll still go after military targets, but also really the supporting targets, the bridges that are really necessary, like the railroad, to be able to continue their trade, to be able to sell their oil, which is how they get most of their resources to run the regime. That's where I think the focus is going to start shifting to put that stranglehold on them, to really make something consequential to them, which is the money that they use to keep the IRGC going.
Mick, how would it affect U.S. strategy if the Houthis become a major actor in this war?
Building partners and alliances. And
so the Bab el-Mandeb, as we just heard, is significant. 12% of all containerized ships go through there. The alternative is to go all the way around the continent of Africa, which adds doubles the cost in fuel alone. You also have to pay the $1 million plus fee to go through the Suez Canal. It has a major impact on global shipping, not just for energy, which of course will be what everybody's talking about, but everything. So this is a significant issue. The Houthis just need to convince commercial vessels that it's unsafe, and they can do that with the strikes that they're carrying out already.
Global economy. Two major oil and Mick, at this point, what do you think the U.S. can do to win and end this war?
On that earlier on GMA. It's easy to see as a customer how it's impacting gas prices. You see it every time you hit the pump. National average this morning, $4.09 a gallon. It has been creeping higher since this re-escalation.
It's going to have to go directly at them, and that is their ability to raise funds to keep their government going, and of course many self-enrich themselves off this. So we're going to have to cut off that ability, primarily the selling of oil, but also all the other enterprises that the IRGC runs around the world. That's going to take building partners and alliances, and reinforcing secondary sanctions, finding road assets that we didn't know about, and freezing it. That's what's going to have to really happen to get the IRGC to change its perspective on opening the Strait of Hormuz, make it more financially painful for them to keep it closed, and then the nuclear agreement. We need to get into something more restrictive than the JCPOA, or at least as restrictive, to ensure that the Iranians never end up with a nuclear weapon.
Yes, that ripple effect.
Mick Mulroy, thank you.
Rebecca Jarvis, thank
Meanwhile,
you.
the expanding conflict is straining the global economy. Two major oil bottlenecks are rattling markets. Chief Business Correspondent Rebecca Jarvis had more on that earlier on GMA.
Another flood threat.
It's easy to see as a customer how it's impacting gas prices. You see it every time you hit the pump. National average this morning, $4.09 a gallon. It has been creeping higher since this re-escalation. Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan predicts the U.S. could see $4.25 to $4.40 a gallon very soon. And it all comes back to the price of oil. Multiple routes are threatened. You just heard from Matt there, a new one, with the price of oil about $89.37 a barrel this morning.
Yeah, and the White House is also imposing new tariffs, which we've seen rattle the markets in the past.
We have, and this new round goes into effect just as the old one expires. It targets 60 economies over what the U.S. describes as forced labor practices. The impact here is likely mostly significant on small and mid-sized businesses. They import a lot, and then customers who pay higher prices as a result of that. Now remember, the reciprocal tariffs, those were largely struck down by the Supreme Court. A number of companies at this point are even getting refunds for those, but importantly here, not consumers.
They have also crashed into this home, shattering windows and punching
Rebecca Jarvis, thank you.
That same system bringing deadly flooding to West Virginia earlier this week, killing at least 2 people. Search and rescue crews
The Carolina coast are under another flood threat. threat. Significant flooding is possible in parts of the southeast from Charleston to Wilmington. The region's been getting hit with heavy rain for days, and it's expected to last into the weekend. ABC's meteorologist Leslie Lopez is in Raleigh with the latest there. Leslie, what's it like there now?
Hotel lobby filled with feet of
well, we've
muddy
had unrelenting rounds of rain. Right now it's pretty light at the moment, but rounds of rain have created opportunities for big, massive trees like the one behind me here to come down. The soil here is just so soft and soggy and saturated. You can see why these trees are coming down. And unfortunately, the threat for more heavy rounds of rain is not over yet.
And people here
this morning, parts of North Carolina facing a multi-day flash flood threat after heavy rain pummeled the region. As much as 5 inches of rain falling in 24 hours in the central part of the state. One tree crushed this vehicle outside Charlotte, trapping a father and child inside. Trevor Tompkins helped pull them to safety.
I had to fight through the trees. I was standing on top of that branch that was behind the car. We pulled him out, and everyone's okay.
An oak tree also crashed into this Raleigh home, shattering windows and punching through the roof. That same system bringing deadly flooding to West Virginia earlier this week, killing at least 2 people. Search and rescue crews still working to clear debris and reopen roads.
At times and definitely cause pounding on roads. Oh my God, no!
This as we are seeing new images of destruction. A car in Buckhannon sucked underneath a bridge by raging floodwaters.
There has been a silver lining to all of this rain
and in Weston, a hotel lobby filled with feet of muddy water.
Drought. 28% of the state of North Carolina.
Meanwhile, overnight, Bertha died off after making a second landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border.
We'll get the new drought monitor next week and see how much this rain did help.
Now, Diana, it looks like there'll be more rounds of heavy rain anywhere from North Carolina to South Carolina. Flood watches will remain in effect all the way through Saturday, and people here are looking around. The danger just not over yet.
Up through Washington have been burning, causing major smoke issues too. This one has evacuations.
And ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Zhu's tracking the timing of the flood threat. So Ginger, what are you seeing on the radar?
It's a big one, and they're still trying to get containment on it.
There still is a flash flood threat today. The storms are going to move slowly and slowly enough for the next 24 hours that anywhere from Wilmington to Charleston find themselves in that level 3 out of 4 for flash flooding. Could even see 3-inch per hour rainfall rates as this moves through. So let's track it a little bit. The timing, it'll kind of hang around that front that's just been so slow to sink. And tomorrow afternoon, even if you've got plans to try to go to the beach, if you're in Myrtle Beach or south of Wilmington down to Charleston, just keep an eye on those storms. They can be heavy at times and definitely cause pounding on roads or worse. We could end up with 4 to 6 inches in any of the red pockets, and even a little bit more south of Wilmington.
Speaking of next week,
there has been a silver lining to all of this rain in North and South Carolina, and that is that they still are in significant drought. 28% of the state of North Carolina is in the second highest level, which is extreme. Here it's represented by that red color. So we'll get the new drought monitor next week and see how much this rain did help.
And now to a
that is some silver lining. Then, you know, a place that would love to get some rain, but not going to happen. This is Wheeler County, Oregon. So many fires, several of them from Oregon State up through Washington have been burning, causing major smoke issues too. This one has evacuations in effect still, the Roe Creek Complex fire. It's burned more than 150,000 acres. It's a big one, and they're still trying to get containment on it. The heat has come down in Oregon, but it's going up again, especially east of them. Look at Billings, above 100 Saturday and Sunday, with daily records possible actually today as well. Rapid City 106 and 105 for the weekend, Denver 100 and 101. So this heat is going to not only stay there, but then creep east, and you add some humidity, it's going to feel like 110 in Memphis on Sunday. Feels like 108 on Sunday in Oklahoma City, or Minneapolis feels like 102. Chicago's going to start to get toasty and swampy by early next week. Speaking of next week, the trend stays likely warmer than normal, especially here in the Rockies and the Southwest. But check out that Great Lakes and Northeast, potentially below average. So this trend that we're in is going to stick, and we'll get that refreshing air staying here. Ginger Z, thank you. And now to a sightseeing plane crash near Seattle. Watch as this plane skims across the ocean, then slams into rocks and bursts into flames. All 11 people on board survived. Trevor Alt has the details.
This morning, dramatic new video of the terrifying moment that tourist float plane crashed along Washington State's coast near Seattle. The plane skimming low over the water before heading straight into the rocky shoreline. That smoking de Havilland Otter seaplane disabled on the rocks.
Just stay there!
Nose in the air as passengers race to escape the cabin, climbing to safety as Good Samaritans rush in to help. Then flames erupting from the aircraft's engine, fire quickly swallowing the plane.
Most likely what happened was the tanks were breached as the airplane hauled it in, and what you saw was an ignition point.
The Coast Guard and local emergency responders racing to the scene. Authorities say the 10 passengers on board and the pilot all survived, but several were hurt, including one person now in critical condition. Officials say that Kenmore Air Flight took off at 4:30 p.m. from Lake Union Thursday for a scenic flight tour bound for Roche Harbor on San Juan Island. It crashed at 5:15 p.m. Investigators are now working to determine what forced the pilot to attempt an emergency landing in Shallow Bay on Susha Island. Kenmore Air CEO says in a statement, "We are grateful that everyone aboard has been accounted for, and our immediate focus is ensuring our passengers and pilot receive the care and support they need," and say they are fully cooperating with the investigating authorities.
The fact that all 11 people got out and the fire indicates not only that there are a lot of boaters around who immediately jumped in to help, but also the resilience of this type of airplane.
Officials say some of those passengers suffered head injuries, lacerations, even some broken bones, but just incredible that all 11 people on board were able to survive that initial impact of that rough landing. Back to you.
Trevor Alt, thank you. And the mayor of Madison, Wisconsin, has identified the man killed in Wednesday's police shooting as Corey Ruiz. Police say Ruiz fell off a bicycle while trying to get away from officers, then pulled a knife when they confronted him. Now, some are questioning whether the shooting was excessive force, and the mayor's promising a rigorous investigation. Pierre Thomas has the latest on that story.
Overnight, a community mourning the death of Corey Ruiz, a black man fatally shot during a violent encounter with police. The vigil coming only hours after a bizarre moment when city leaders tried to provide an update to the community about Ruiz's death.
She says releasing few details about the case is by design.
A man spewing anti-Semitic and anti-capitalism views suddenly emerges from the audience and literally takes the microphone from the Madison police chief. The tense moment came as the city grapples with Ruiz's death, which is raising the searing questions of race and policing. ABC News reviewing multiple videos showing what took place. Police were responding to reports of a man checking the doors of parked cars Wednesday afternoon. Officers spotting him, but police say he took off on a bike. They catch up with him roughly a half hour later. Police say he pulled out a fixed-blade knife. Officers trying to tase him, but police say they were unsuccessful.
Make targeted edits, for example, change materials.
The struggle continues with the man ending up on the ground on his side. Then, 3 shots fired.
Explore different lighting.
Ruiz pronounced dead at a local hospital. Part of the controversy, police in Madison typically do not wear body cameras.
I understand the very strong emotions that people are feeling.
And iterate together in
I'm feeling them too.
A new way to work with AI.
The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave, and the police chief says that an independent investigation has been launched by the state. Back to you.
Pierre Thomas, thank you. Coming up, the district attorney is defending the investigation into Nolan Wells' death. Why she says releasing few details about the case is by design. Also ahead, wildfires are sparking warnings of extraordinary danger. The heat wave forcing people to leave European vacation spots.
En la app Mi Bancolombia, pasar tus pesos a dólares y euros digitales es más rápido que este video. Abre tu cuenta global de Buenia desde la app Mi Bancolombia.
Streaming every day, only on Disney+.
We have breaking news from London. Singer Chris Brown has just pleaded guilty to a charge in connection with an alleged attack in a 2023 London nightclub. Brown is pleading to a lesser charge, and in exchange, prosecutors say they'll drop the more serious assault charges. In the plea, Brown and a co-defendant admit to, quote, using or threatening unlawful violence that caused a music producer to fear for his safety. Brown will be sentenced on October 26th. And the Jackson County District Attorney is defending the investigation into Nolan Wells' death. She says her office is taking the appropriate amount of time to complete their work. But Wells' family says they're skeptical Mississippi authorities are up to the job. ABC's Aaron Katursky has the details.
This morning, nearly 3 weeks since Nolan Wells vanished in the waters off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the district attorney is speaking out to defend the investigation into the 18-year-old's death.
Nolan's family deserves answers, and our community deserves answers.
While his family and his community are clamoring for answers, District Attorney Angel Myers-McElrath says Wells' case is being handled the same way as every death investigation.
I understand the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan, but we are not taking time for time's sake.
Streaming every day only on Disney Plus
to complete the work this investigation demands.
She met last week with Wells' parents who pledged to
news from
allow
London. Singer Chris Brown has just pleaded guilty to a charge in connection with an alleged attack in a 2023 London nightclub. Brown is pleading to a lesser charge, and in exchange, prosecutors say they'll drop the more serious assault charges. In the plea, Brown and a co-defendant admit to, quote, using or threatening unlawful violence that caused a music producer to fear for his safety. Brown will be sentenced on October 26th. And the Jackson County District Attorney is defending the investigation into Nolan Wells' death. She says her office is taking the appropriate amount of time to complete their work. But Wells' family says they're skeptical Mississippi authorities are up to the job. ABC's Aaron Katursky has the details.
It was not
this morning,
even
nearly 3 weeks since Nolan Wells vanished in the waters off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the district attorney is speaking out to defend the investigation into the 18-year-old's death.
Nolan's family deserves answers,
Sources tell ABC News Wells' body was found while his family and his community are clamoring for answers. District Attorney Angel Myers-McElrath says Wells' case is being handled the same way as every death investigation.
I understand the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan, but we are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands.
She met last week with Wells' parents, who pledged to allow investigators to examine his phone, which he left behind in a boat during a July 4th trip with friends to Horn Island. Few details have been released, but the district attorney says that's by design.
The pressure for answers does not change what the work requires. Our responsibility to Nolan and our community is to complete this investigation thoroughly, carefully, without compromise, supported by the evidence, and worthy of the confidence of the people we serve.
The Wells family is skeptical Mississippi authorities are up to the job.
My concern, and also my husband's concern, was it was not even an hour that his body had been removed, and the sheriff came out and said, this is, accidental drowning. We don't think there's foul play.
Sources tell ABC News Wells' body was found face down in the water, consistent with drowning. An autopsy the family commission said the cause and manner of the 18-year-old's death was undetermined.
Results of the state's autopsy are now pending. The district attorney is pleading for patience, hoping to convince the public that protecting the integrity of the investigation will allow the truth to be known with confidence.
And officials are warning these dangerous fire conditions. And a wildfire emergency spreading across southern Europe. Fast-moving flames are threatening popular vacation destinations for thousands of tourists. Now officials warn it could get even worse. Maggie Woolley has the latest from London. Maggie?
We saw these fires explode overnight, with the number of people evacuated nearly doubling across the region, and there doesn't appear to be any relief in sight. This morning, wildfires raging across Europe are forcing more than 70,000 people to evacuate. Flames engulfing beaches in southwest France, as authorities order the evacuation of the entire peninsula of the popular hotspot Cap Ferret, just southwest of Bordeaux. 32 fires across France, burning almost 3 times as much land compared to this point last year. Thousands of firefighters fighting the fires from the ground and the air. 2 firefighters were killed earlier this week. The flames fueled by another prolonged heat wave across southern Europe. Officials in neighboring Spain are warning of extraordinary danger and declared a national emergency in the area around Madrid. Several regions in Greece are on the highest alert level for wildfire danger. And officials are warning these dangerous fire conditions will continue with high wind and high heat expected to last for days.
Maggie Rulli, thank you. Coming up, Jimothy the raccoon is becoming the star of the summer. How the so-called round raccoon is catching the eye of businesses, baseball teams, and even NASA.
¿Cansado de sentir que te están vigilando en línea? Con ExpressVPN, sea anónimo y protege tus datos con solo un toque. ExpressVPN te permite cambiar tu dirección IP y ubicación virtual, protegiendo tu identidad de sitios, aplicaciones y rastreadores. Esto también evita que tu proveedor de servicios de Internet o tu operador de telefonía móvil monitoreen tu actividad y encriptamos tu conexión para mantenerte protegido de los ciberdelincuentes. Tu privacidad es nuestra prioridad. Obtén ExpressVPN hoy y comienza tu protección digital.
ABC News Live. Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, Jimothy the raccoon is captivating the internet. So Jimothy has a congenital condition called short spine syndrome, and that makes him uniquely round compared to other raccoons. Now he's the summer's most unlikely influencer, and brands are cashing in. ABC's Lara Spencer has that story.
It's the summer of Jimothy, the lovable, resilient, and curiously shaped raccoon taking the internet by storm. His name and likeness popping up everywhere. A Jimothy mascot racing around the bases at a Mariners game. Bobbleheads and t-shirts with the lovable little guy for sale. Even brands like Google and Budweiser are celebrating Jimothy. Goodyear Tires posting, if Jimothy is crossing the road, your tires better be able to stop. NASA posting a picture of Jimothy's Seattle neighborhood from space with the caption, Jimothy runs this city. And he sure does. Jimothy is a hometown hero. Seattle tattoo shops offering Jimothy deals. A local glass blowing studio selling out their $125 Jimothy creations. And a local artist's portrait of Jimothy raising more than $6,000 for a local food bank. Jimothy is so popular that Washington State confirms someone has already claimed the Jimothy
Welcome back to
license
ABC
plate.
News Live. First,
People
Jimothy the raccoon is captivating the internet. So Jimothy has a congenital condition called short spine syndrome, and that makes him uniquely round compared to other raccoons. Now he's the summer's most unlikely influencer, and brands are cashing in. ABC's Lara Spencer has that story.
Video of him now with
It's
8
the
million
summer of
views
Jimothy,
and counting.
the lovable,
The raccoon appears
resilient,
to
and
have a rare
curiously
congenital
shaped
spinal
raccoon
deformity
taking the
called
internet by
short spine
storm.
syndrome.
His name
But
and
multiple
likeness
animal
popping up
experts say
everywhere.
he
A
appears
Jimothy
healthy.
mascot racing
Jana
around the
telling
bases at a
Seattle
Mariners
Times
game.
She came up with the unique name because he just looked like a
Bobbleheads and
Jimothy.
t-shirts with the lovable little guy for sale.
Lara
Even
Spencer,
brands
thank
like
you. And
Google
on Sunday,
and
a Seattle
Budweiser are
councilman will
celebrating
issue an
Jimothy.
official city
Goodyear Tires
proclamation
posting,
declaring it
if Jimothy is
Jimothy
crossing the
Summer.
road,
There
your
will also
tires
be a
better be able to
Jimothy-inspired
stop.
art contest where
NASA
winners'
posting a
creations
picture
will
of
be
Jimothy's
displayed
Seattle
in City
neighborhood
Hall
from
through
space
Labor
with the
Day.
caption, Jimothy
Coming
runs
up,
this city.
The Trump
And he
administration
sure
is putting new
does.
tariffs in place.
Jimothy is a
Experts say they're
hometown
likely
hero.
here to stay,
Seattle
and how
tattoo
they'll
shops
affect you.
offering Jimothy deals. A local glass blowing studio selling out their $125 Jimothy creations. And a local artist's portrait of Jimothy raising more than $6,000 for a local food bank. Jimothy is so popular that Washington State confirms someone has already claimed the Jimothy license plate. People just can't seem to get enough of this little round raccoon, who is following in the footsteps of beloved animals like Chonkers the sea lion and Punch the monkey. Jimothy was first spotted and named by Kiana Hall on July 13th. What am I looking at? Her Instagram video of him, now with 8 million views and counting. The raccoon appears to have a rare congenital spinal deformity called short spine syndrome, but multiple animal experts say he appears healthy. Kiana telling the Seattle Times she came up with the unique name because he just looked like a Jimothy.
Lara Spencer, thank you. And on Sunday, a Seattle council member will issue an official city proclamation declaring it Jimothy Summer. There will also be a Jimothy-inspired art contest where winners' creations will be displayed in City Hall through Labor Day. Coming up, the Trump administration is putting new tariffs in place, why experts say they're likely here to stay and how they'll affect you. Diana Macedo. Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, you're looking at the White House on this Friday. And the Trump administration is imposing new tariffs on more than 80 countries. The new 10% or more tariffs replace a global 10% tariff that expired at midnight. This is now the third version of these tariffs, and they affect 99% of U.S. imports. The administration argues it will protect American trade interests and the U.S. economy. Critics say the tariffs will end up hurting American consumers. Let's bring University of Michigan professor of economics Justin Wolfers for more on that. Hi, Justin. Thanks for coming on. So you are one of those critics that I referred to just there. We're going to get into that. But first, can you just explain what Section 301 is and why that's so important here?
Yeah. Okay, we have to go back one further to the Constitution. The US, part of its origin story is we didn't like taxes just being imposed by a monarch. And so the Constitution gave the power to tax to Congress, not to the president. So the Constitution doesn't give the president any inherent power to impose tariffs here at all. So the president has to look for times in the past where Congress has said, hey, White House, you can have this set of tariff powers. He tried that with the first round of tariffs, which was based on the Emergency Powers Act. The Supreme Court said that was unconstitutional, threw them out. He then relied on a different set of powers for the tariffs we've had.
Hi, I'm Diana Macedo. Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, you were looking at the White House on this Friday. And the Trump administration is imposing new tariffs on more than 80 countries. The new 10% or more tariffs replace a global 10% tariff that expired at midnight. This is now the third version of these tariffs, and they affect 99% of U.S. imports. The administration argues it will protect American trade interests and the U.S. economy. Critics say the tariffs will end up hurting American consumers. Let's bring University of Michigan professor of economics Justin Wolfers for more on that. Hi, Justin. Thanks for coming on. So you are one of those critics that I referred to just there. We're going to get into that. But first, can you just explain what Section 301 is and why that's so important here?
Pretext.
Okay, we have to go back one further to the Constitution. The US, part of its origin story is we didn't like taxes just being imposed by a monarch. And so the Constitution gave the power to tax to Congress, not to the president. So the Constitution doesn't give the president any inherent power to impose tariffs here at all. So the president has to look for times in the past where Congress has said, hey, White House, you can have this set of tariff powers. He tried that with the first round of tariffs, which was based on the Emergency Powers Act. The Supreme Court said that was unconstitutional, threw them out. He then relied on a different set of powers for the tariffs we've had over the past 6 months. Those may well still be ruled illegal, but anyway, they were only ever allowed to last for 6 months. 6 months just ended. So now the president has come up with a third approach. This third approach may in fact be legal, even if it's the most bizarre. Basically, the president is saying, or pretending to say, we're really worried about forced labour. Think about slavery and the like in all of these other countries. Therefore, we're going to put tariffs on them because if they're using forced labour, that's unfair for Americans to have to compete against them. Now I'm going to say, as an Aussie, we don't use forced labour. My friends in Canada, they don't use forced labour. The whole thing's a legal pretext in order for the bloke just to get his tariffs back on the rest of the world.
And many of them did come to the table and have come to the table since Trump started talking about imposing tariffs. So what's your response to the idea that the downsides are worth it for more leverage?
I'm an economics professor, and what I do is I look at economic theory and I look at what's actually happening out there. And what's actually happening is the president told us that if he imposed tariffs on other countries would pay them. That's very compelling political rhetoric. It's also totally false. All of the studies that have been done so far say that here's the most important thing for people to understand. When the United States imposes a tariff on Canada, which the president also just did, that is a tax on Americans who import goods from Canada. So when your maple syrup arrives at the port, it gets stuck in customs until you go there and you pony up the tax, which we call a tariff. It's a tax on Americans. And so immediately we're seeing that pass through into a higher cost of living. And more than that, the president has a view that any time we import something from abroad, that's the other side winning and us losing. I, in most economies, prefer to see trade as a form of cooperation. Hey, Canadians, you do the stuff you're really good at. We'll do the stuff we're really good at. And then we'll trade so that we both end up with a little bit more.
You say these will likely be upheld. The administration says the tariffs will give us more leverage over our trading partners. And many of them did come to the table and have come to the table since Trump started talking about and imposing tariffs. So what's your response to the idea that the downsides are worth it for more leverage?
Gives the power over tariffs to Congress.
That might have been true with the first round of tariffs, where what the president was doing was tariffs, he'd make up a number for each country. He'd say, here's my tariff on Australia, on China, on Malaysia, on the herd and dog violence. But those tariffs were ruled unconstitutional. So what he's done this time is he's imposed basically a uniform tariff on every country around the world. There's a little asterisk, it's not quite uniform, but it's awfully close to uniform. He now realised how much leverage does the president have. He can't call up China and say, we've got a 10% tariff on you unless you come to the table and negotiate a trade agreement with you. Because now we have a uniform tariff on every country around the world. So this form of tariff has zero leverage. So the president's whole idea here, it just ran out of juice, and basically his legal advisors have found him a way to get tariffs, but they're not the sort of tariffs that he wants in order to get the sort of leverage he thinks that he wants to get here.
First started ramping up tariffs, Justin, the Supreme Court, as you mentioned, already shot down some Trump tariffs, but you say these will likely be upheld in court. Why? Seen these major impacts.
So first of all, let me just say, I'm an economist, not a lawyer, so call a lawyer for better advice, but I do talk to a lot of lawyers.
Let me go back a step, which is
here's the thing. Again, remember, the Constitution gives the power over tariffs to Congress, not the White House. If the president wanted a rock-solid way forward with tariffs, what he'd do is he'd just pass a bill, get it through Congress. But he can't. Congress doesn't like what he's doing, so he has to go it alone. The courts tend to give a lot of deference when past Congresses have given the White House particular powers. And so this one's got a lot of paperwork, it's got an investigation, it took several months to get through. And basically this time the Supreme Court would have to say, hey, we don't think you did your homework right. The Supreme Court doesn't like to say that. So this was a process that required a lot of legal paperwork. They've done their legal paperwork. Even though the whole thing's a joke, it's not about forced labour. All of the paperwork is pretty insincere. It's very likely the Supreme Court will give that deference, and so therefore this will turn out to be legal, even though it's less effective than the ones that were illegal.
And Justin, when the administration first started ramping up tariffs, many argued that it would tank the global economy, put Wall Street into a tailspin. Inflation has increased a bit, but we haven't seen these major impacts, at least not yet. Why do you think that is, and what do you expect to happen now with this third round?
Well, let me go back a step, which is, in fact, when the president announced the Liberation Day tariffs, it did tank global stock markets. And then 7 days later, he suspended them, and they rose again. So that does seem to suggest the market thought that this was really bad. Let me also point you to one other really important statistic. Our peer countries, you could think of them as being the group of 7 other large industrialized countries. The United States today has higher inflation than any other country in the G7. I want to make one more point, which is a lot of the costs of tariffs are not fundamentally about what's going to happen to next quarter's GDP and next month's unemployment rate. They're much more about America's place in the world. It takes time for what you see right now is our former allies and trading partners are looking for more reliable friends elsewhere.
I'm out of time, but really quickly,
That's a pattern that will play out over years and decades rather than over weeks or months.
They have to pay essentially. Talk about the bigger impact here. What happens if America's trading partners look at this and say, you know what, we'll find that stuff elsewhere then?
Absolutely.
So the economic part of this is pretty simple, which is, look, I come from a country that is a small island, or it's a large island on the other side of the world, Australia, and we think being shut off from the rest of the world is actually a very difficult, makes our economic lives more difficult. The United States, by contrast, sits at the centre of world commerce, both physically and economically, and that's been a tremendous boon. It brings in better products, it brings in new ideas, it brings in new ways of doing business, and so on. The United States is in the process of isolating itself from the rest of the world. And so the first thing that does is it's going to raise the cost of living. Second thing, it makes our economy less dynamic. It means that American companies don't have to compete so hard anymore. And so don't be surprised if we're paying higher prices even for American-made goods, because they're no longer going to be competing with others. And then beyond the economics, there's this question of what is America's place in the world and how will that play out geopolitically over time. If we've made ourselves less essential and less good friends for everyone else, I think that reduces our role in the world.
And Justin, I'm out of time, but really quickly, I just want to pull on that thread a little bit more. Are you saying Americans will not only be paying more because they have to pay essentially the cost of the tariff, but also might be paying higher prices because American companies will have less competition?
Absolutely. One of the most important things international trade does is it forces American companies to give American consumers a good deal.
Justin Wolfers, we appreciate your time today and your analysis. Thank you. you.
Prosecutors allege the 21-year-old singer killed 14-year-old
And a member of Vice
Celeste
President
Rivas
Vance's security details under investigation for possibly leaking sensitive information. ABC Capitol correspondent Jay O'Brien has the details from Washington. Hi, Jay.
Examiner set to take the stand for
the Secret Service says an agent on Vice President J.D. Vance's detail is facing an internal investigation and even a potential criminal probe over accusations this unnamed agent leaked information about the Vice President's travel, compromising his security. A Secret Service spokesperson telling ABC News that, quote, any conduct that potentially threatens the safety of a protectee will not be tolerated. According to a source, this all ties back to a report by MS Now, which ABC News has not independently verified, reporting that some agents were growing frustrated by what they thought were last-minute, hastily planned, and in some instances inappropriate travel by VP Vance and his family. The examples in that report include a reported planned flight on a military helicopter to bring the Vice President and his son to a golf lesson, which was ultimately canceled due to bad weather, and repeated flights to an area in rural Virginia where the Vances were reportedly going house hunting. We've not heard back from the Vice President's office after a request for comment. Back to you.
All right, Jay O'Brien, thank you. And the singer David is expected in court today for the fourth day of his preliminary hearing over the murder of a teenager. Prosecutors allege the 21-year-old singer killed 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez to prevent her from exposing their alleged sexual relationship. David has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and now the medical examiner is set to take the stand for a second day. Let's bring ABC legal analyst Brian Buckmeyer for more on the case. Hi, Brian. So yesterday, the medical examiner said pieces of an inflatable pool were found in the remains of Rivas Hernandez. How crucial is that piece of evidence given the narrative that prosecutors are painting here?
Good morning, Diane. It's extremely crucial, especially when you connect it with all the other pieces of evidence. So far, the prosecution has shown that David, under an alias, allegedly bought this pool, and then they have the scene that being the garage where they're saying that there was blood found in that garage. But I think even more importantly, there are allegations that there are pieces of that pool inside the wounds of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, making the argument that there's no other reasonable explanation except for that her body was mutilated inside that pool and must have been done so by the person who purchased it.
An LAPD detective also testified that David's cell phone and the cell signal from his Tesla places him where evidence was found 3 times. What do you make of that?
Motive and opportunity, Diane, those are the major pieces that any investigation will try to prove in order to show that someone has the opportunity and the reason to kill someone. This is about opportunity. He's in the location where items from Celeste Rivas Hernandez are found. If there's no other reasonable non-criminal explanation, I think that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt if presented to a jury at trial that he is the one that at least has something to do with her murder, if not the actual person who did it.
Defense attorneys for David argue the exact longitude and latitude of the cell phone data doesn't match.
Coming up,
how precise do you think that data has to be for you to say that this shows this person was in this place?
Dr. Patel, next.
I think it's got to be within a reasonable expectation, but it also depends on the geography itself. It's very different, for example, where I practice in New York, if we're saying, hey, you could be off by 500 yards. That's a completely other different block. That's a completely different other apartment complex. But if you're talking about a body being dismembered and left in the middle of nowhere, and you're off by 500 meters, I don't think that really has a strong argument, because the question still becomes, why are you in this deserted area at this time in this place? Who cares if we're off by a few hundred meters? Or yards, sorry. There's nothing else here but that body that was disposed of.
This hearing's likely to wrap up today. What are you taking away from it?
I'm taking away that the prosecution has a pretty strong case, and the defense are making headway in areas that I think they can make arguments. I don't think the defense has played their hand. No defense attorney plays their hand in a preliminary hearing, because for the most part, this is an exploratory process for the defense to get more information. But for the prosecution, they have a strong circumstantial evidence case that I think borderline on direct evidence as to the fact that David is the main suspect in the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Sorry.
Brian, thank you. Coming up, peptides are one step closer to being legally available with a prescription. So should you be taking them? We'll ask Dr. Patel next. Welcome back to ABC News Live First. More than 1 million cartons of eggs are being recalled over potential salmonella contamination. Midwest Poultry Services says both the white and brown shell eggs were produced in Texas and have sell-by dates between July 20th and August 17th. Recalled eggs were sold at Kroger in Texas and Louisiana and Berkshire grocery stores in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Mississippi. The company says it's not aware of any illnesses linked to the eggs. And New Jersey's cracking down on surveillance prices. Some companies are using AI to adjust prices in real time. That means you could pay a different price when you're checking out than someone else buying that same thing at the same time. Now, New Jersey is preventing grocery stores from using personal data to set prices. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze in Washington, D.C. with those details. Elizabeth?
This is a growing movement to crack down on surveillance pricing. So that's when companies use AI to adjust prices in real time. So you could pay a different price when you're checking out than someone buying the same thing, same time. New Jersey's governor signing a new law that prevents grocery stores from using personal data like your browsing or purchasing history to set prices. Maryland and Connecticut have approved similar bans on surveillance pricing for groceries. New York also passed legislation on this. New Jersey's law also implements a one-year
Welcome
ban
back to
on the
ABC
use
News
of
Live
new
First. More than 1
digital
million
price tags
cartons of
on
eggs are
shelves
being
at stores. So you
recalled
might have
over
seen, for
potential
example,
salmonella
electronic prices at
contamination.
Walmart,
Midwest
which
Poultry
the company
Services
stay
says
the
both
same no
the
matter
white
who's
and brown
shopping.
shell eggs were
There is
produced
some
in Texas and have sell-by dates between July 20th and August 17th. Recalled eggs were sold at Kroger in Texas and Louisiana and Berkshire grocery stores in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Mississippi. The company says it's not aware of any illnesses linked to the eggs. Where ABC News contributor Dr. And New Jersey's cracking down on surveillance prices. Some companies are using AI to adjust prices in real time. That means you could pay a different price when you're checking out than someone else buying that same thing at the same time. Now, New Jersey is preventing grocery stores from using personal data to set prices. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze in Washington, D.C. with those details. Elizabeth? So break it down for us. What are peptides?
This is a growing movement to crack down on surveillance pricing. So that's when companies use AI to adjust prices in real time. So you could pay a different price when you're checking out than someone buying the same thing, same time. New Jersey's governor signing a new law that prevents grocery stores from using personal data like your browsing or purchasing history to set prices. Maryland and Connecticut have approved similar bans on surveillance pricing for groceries. New York also passed legislation on this. New Jersey's law also implements a one-year ban on the use of new digital price tags on shelves at stores. So you might have seen, for example, electronic prices at Walmart, which the company says stay the same no matter who's shopping. There is some opposition to this new law. An association representing New Jersey businesses says that new limits on consumer data could ultimately result in fewer loyalty programs, coupons, and discounts for customers. Back to you.
Elizabeth Schulze, thank you. And it's time for our segment, but Tell It Like It Is, where ABC News contributor Dr. Alok Patel shares health advice on the topics that matter most to you. Today, he's talking about peptides, cyclosporiasis, answering a viewer question about sunlight and vitamin D. And Dr. Patel, let's get right into it, shall we? Peptides are now one step closer to being legally available with a prescription, but there's a lot of debate over whether they're effective, whether they're safe. So break it down for us. What are peptides, and should we be taking them?
Great question, Diane. So we're talking about peptides. Most people are referring to these wellness peptides because a peptide in general is just a short chain of amino acids, the building blocks of protein. We make thousands of peptides in our body already, everything from insulin to GLPs to different hormones. The conversation right now is about these wellness peptides that have claims about longevity, wound healing, tissue repair, and more. And it's hard to say whether or not people should be taking them because simply put, and we heard this from FDA-approved scientists, we simply don't have the efficacy data. We don't have long-term safety data. There is no mechanism in place to even monitor these effects. So it's hard to really give people guidance. Now, if you're part of a specific clinical trial, or if you're in a situation in which you've exhausted all your treatment options and you're working directly with a physician who may be licensed at giving peptides, that is possibly a different conversation. For the young, average, healthy adult perusing the internet, you probably don't need to be taking anything that you're going to buy from a telehealth wellness company.
Multi-state outbreak.
So how does the medical community balance what's not known about peptides versus all the claims about their benefits?
There are still different
It's a difficult balance, and that split down the line is exactly what we heard yesterday in the hearing with FDA career scientists, clinicians, and the Boston medical community simply saying, hey, we are not against these peptides. We simply need to see more long-term data. We need to see randomized clinical trials with one example only having one small clinical trial. Then on the other hand, what people working in the telehealth industry with med spas were in favor of adding peptides to this bulk list for the FDA, saying, hey, the public is using them already. Why not give them a credible source? So the medical community right now is really split between the public health demand for peptides and the clear lack of long-term data.
A couple times a week.
And meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting the CDC is linking 4 more states to the cyclosporiasis outbreak. What's your reaction to that?
If it's cloudy outside.
Our reaction is that we want to see a verification from the FDA, from the CDC, that this outbreak is in fact tied to that shredded lettuce outbreak that we were talking about earlier this week. But the Washington Post is reporting that there are 4 more states now, a total of 9 that are possibly linked to that lettuce, which was recalled. So hopefully we'll see an effect later with cases going down. But this is part of a larger multi-state outbreak. And an important distinction is not every case we're seeing or talking about is linked to that shredded lettuce. There are still different cases in some clusters where the original source is not yet identified. So a lot of tracking, and just a reminder for people to be very careful about watching potentially cooking foods, but also to pay attention to any updates about recalled foods. You don't want a parasitic stomach inflammation right now during the summer.
And I want to get to this viewer question too. Elizabeth from the Tampa Bay area wants to know, how much sunlight do you actually need to get the recommended amount of vitamin D?
Amazing question, especially right now. So the short answer is kind of a Goldilocks effect, where it kind of depends. But in general, depending on where you live, you really only need, Diane, about 5 to 30 minutes of midday sun, only a couple times a week. Now, that may differ depending on your latitude, how far you are from the sun, how much clothing you're wearing, the color of your skin, if it's cloudy outside, and so forth. So long story short, there is no really safe dose of ultraviolet radiation. The American Academy of Dermatology says, hey, the sun is a viable source of vitamin D, but it's safer to get it from foods, such as fish and fortified foods or supplements as well, because guess what? In winter, not a reliable source. In summer, when it's burning up outside, maybe you can avoid that.
All right, Dr. Alok Patel, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have questions for Dr. Patel, leave him a message at ABC News Live on Instagram, and he might answer your question right here on Friday. Coming up, Snoop Dogg's stories coming to the big screen, what we know about the movie showing his controversial journey from rapper to family favorite in the drop.
¿Cansado de sentir que te están vigilando en línea? Con ExpressVPN, sea anónimo y protege tus datos con solo un toque. ExpressVPN te permite cambiar tu dirección IP y ubicación virtual, protegiendo tu identidad de sitios, aplicaciones y rastreadores. Esto también evita que tu proveedor de servicios de Internet o tu operador de telefonía móvil monitoreen tu actividad, y encriptamos tu conexión para mantenerte protegido de los ciberdelincuentes. Tu privacidad es nuestra prioridad. Obtén ExpressVPN hoy y comienza tu protección digital.
Me voy a bañar, permiso. Me voy a bañar.
Ture, the #1 newscast in America.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, it's time for The Drop, where we talk about the big music headlines of the week. ABC News contributor, DJ, and radio personality Megan Wright is here to break it down for us. Hi, Megan. What do we need to know?
Good morning, Diane. We have another major music biopic heading to theaters next summer, and I can't wait for it. Snoop Dogg's life story, or at least part of it, is coming to the big screen. Titled Snoop, details on the R-rated movie's plot has yet to be confirmed, but there sure is a whole lot of possible ground to cover, from his upbringing in Long Beach, California, his early career on Death Row Records, the 1993 murder trial that ended in a total acquittal in '96, which of course heavily influenced his track Murder Was the Case. And then of course we had a 30-plus year career in the music industry that followed. Now the West Coast legend's rap debut came in the early 90s when he was featured on Dr. Dre's debut single Deep Cover, and then of course on the classic album The Chronic. Now going on to become one of the most famous and recognizable rappers in history, some of Snoop's biggest hits include Gin and Juice, What's My Name, and Drop It Like It's Hot. Now who's gonna play Snoop in the movie? This is a big question. Outer Banks' Jonathan Davis has been cast in the role, with more details sure to come. The Universal Pictures slated Snoop's release for August 6, 2027. Excited about that. Now we've got some new music from Kendrick Lamar on the horizon, and Donald Glover is the one who premiered it. He gave us a little sneak peek, let's say that. Actor and music artist Donald Glover, also known to fans as Childish Gambino, previewed a new Kendrick Lamar song on a recent episode of his Gilga Radio, where he frequently premieres new music. Now, Glover played the new Lamar track titled How to Pray, which features Amber Mark and will be on Dahi's debut album titled Black Boy Alternative. Now, DJ Dahi is a frequent collaborator of Lamar, contributing to production on his critically acclaimed Good Kid, Mad City, Damn, and Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Now, this is a big deal, and fans are very excited because we usually don't get a lot of Kendrick features in between his albums, and this is the second of 2026 so far. We will hear that and more on Dahi's album, which is scheduled for release on August 26th. Now, speaking of albums, Diane, I have something for you to listen to this weekend. Charli XCX dropped her new album, Music, Fashion, and Film. Charli's album is officially out. The 11-track album is all Charli, except for the last song, which features Canadian director and screenwriter David Cronenberg. Fans can hear an excerpt of a conversation he had with Charli last year about the legacy of art. Now this week, she dropped a music video for camera off of the project. Let's check it out.
It makes me want to throw my life away, 'cause I feel different on the mark. Something new and undiscovered, and something kind of violent.
I love this video, Diane. So when you're out and about this weekend, you can listen to some new Charli.
All right, Megan Wright, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching. I'm Diane Macedo. The news never stops, and neither do we. We have a lot more news after the break. Stay with us.
¿Qué escondes? ¿Qué ves? Wow. Uf. ¿Viste eso?
No puedo ver nada desde aquí. Es increíble.
You're the #1 newscast in America.
Alice, what do we have? 3 victims. They're all traffickers of underage girls. The suspect is female, white, late 20s.
I feel like I've met you before.
Yeah, I've met before.
You have no idea who you're dealing with. And you are gonna end up dead.
I've been waiting for you.
You're watching America's #1 streaming news. Keep streaming with ABC News Live.
Hi, I'm Diana Macedo. Today on ABC News Live. First, President Trump says he's considering a massive attack on Iran. Sources say that could include strikes as large as Operation Epic Fury. Now, Iran-backed rebels in Yemen are threatening a new oil checkpoint. We have the latest on the fighting and what it all means for gas prices. And the Trump administration is imposing new tariffs on more than 80 countries, how it's already impacting the economy. Plus, the seaplane crash off the coast of Washington State. Video shows the plane skimming across the ocean, slamming into rocks and bursting into flames. How all 11 people on board made it out alive. But first, President Trump's threatening a major escalation in the war with Iran. The president says he's considering a, quote, massive attack after Iran-backed rebels hit Saudi ships in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, the U.S. Central Command says it launched another round of Iran strikes for the 13th straight day. Now the UN Secretary General is warning the situation's getting out of control. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce is tracking all that from Washington. Mary?
Well, as these daily strikes continue, sources tell us that President Trump is preparing for a dramatic escalation, possibly even returning to the kind of full-scale attacks we saw at the beginning of this conflict. Overnight, the U.S. launching strikes on Iran for the 13th consecutive night. Iran responding with another wave of drone attacks against U.S. assets in Kuwait. The strikes continuing as President Trump now threatens a major escalation in the war, telling Axios he's considering a massive attack bigger than ever before, saying the U.S. is prepared and that he's close to making a decision.
We want to get it over with, and we want to do it right.
Sources tell ABC News one option under consideration is a return to the kind of full-scale strikes seen in the opening days of the war. The conflict is already expanding, with Iranian-backed Houthi rebels attacking 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea, choking another key waterway. Trump claims that Iran wants to come back to the table, but that he's not yet willing to negotiate, saying they haven't received enough pain yet. And less than 24 hours after announcing a landmark agreement with Saudi Arabia, allowing them to develop a civilian nuclear energy program and possibly enrich uranium, the president is now dramatically changing the terms with a new condition that could put the entire deal out of reach. Trump saying it is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the very respected and successful Abraham Accords. But that remains highly unlikely. It would require Saudi Arabia to normalize diplomatic relations with Israel, something they have refused to do unless Israel commits to a Palestinian state. And Iran is now out with a stark new warning, telling civilians in countries hosting U.S. military personnel to stay at least 500 meters from any building suspected of housing American forces. Back to you.
Mary Bruce, thank you. And a new oil choke point is emerging in the Red Sea. More than 10% of the world's oil supply flows through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now the Houthi blockade there is compounding the global energy crisis. ABC's Matt Rivers is in Jordan with more on that. Matt?
Hey there, so we're alongside the Red Sea and what really is shaping up to be yet another front in this ongoing conflict between Iran and the United States, and yet this new front could have a massive impact on the global economy as we watch this all play out. Multiple Saudi oil tankers have been targeted recently in the Red Sea by the Houthis in Yemen. That's the Iranian-backed rebel group there, part of what that group is calling a maritime embargo on Saudi Arabia. President Trump responding, saying if they do this again, the U.S. will hold Iran responsible. Now, we've been talking about the Strait of Hormuz for months, but less so about a strait called Bab el-Mandeb, right at the southern tip of the Red Sea, just off the coast of Yemen. 10 to 12% of all global shipping goes through that strait each year. And crucially, since the start of this conflict, Saudi Arabia has been rerouting much of its oil exports through Bab el-Mandeb instead of the Strait of Hormuz. That's in part helped oil prices from going even higher than they would have otherwise. The real fear now is what happens if the Houthis, at Iran's direction, decide to close Bab el-Mandeb altogether. That would obviously have a tremendous impact on the global economy. It could push oil prices up to $150 a barrel or more, according to some analysts that we've spoken to about the worst case scenario here. So this is a very, very fraught moment here along the Red Sea. Back to you.
Matt Rivers, thank you. And the Trump administration is imposing new tariffs on more than 80 countries. The new 10% or more tariffs replace a global tariff that expired at midnight. This new round affects 99% of U.S. imports. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze is in Washington with more on that. So, Elizabeth, this is the president's third attempt at these tariffs, or third round of these tariffs. What's different this time compared to the previous ones?
Yeah, what a journey this has been in some ways, Diane, when you think about all the different iterations of these tariffs. And now you've got this sweeping action, 60 trading partners, 80 countries total that are facing these new tariff rates of between 10 and 12.5%. How we got here is, as you'll remember, about a year and a half ago, the president imposed those reciprocal tariffs on many of the U.S. biggest trading partners. Those tariffs were struck down by the Supreme Court. The president then went into a different authority to try to put some temporary ones in place. Those were expiring, so now we're back to this new authority, Section 301, where basically what's happened is that the White House, the Trump administration, has done these investigations. This is a more traditional way of imposing tariffs into all of these partners. They're accusing them of using forced labor practices as a justification for putting these new tariffs in place. So this 301 authority is something that's more established, likely wouldn't face kind of the same challenges that we've seen to some of the other authorities the president has used for tariffs. But the bottom line here, not as high of a rate, Diane, as we saw at the beginning of this kind of blanket tariffs that were imposed, but still a higher rate that is something that a lot of companies are going to be struggling with figuring out exactly what this looks like. 99% of the products imported estimated to be affected by these new tariffs.
So how's this expected to impact American companies and consumers?
Yeah, so there's confusion, right? We've been in this back and forth where you're trying to figure out what is it, if you're a company, especially a small business. I've been talking to a lot of them. They say, what are we actually paying here? What is the rate? So that's one part of this uncertainty. But, you know, in some ways, I guess this has been announced now. Maybe there's a little bit of certainty. They figure it out. The other part is, does it mean that those companies that had started to kind of accept the status quo as they face higher costs, which we've talked about from the beginning, that means importers are paying more for products. Do they absorb those or do they pass them down? And what we saw with a lot of the tariffs over the past year and a half is a lot of companies, Diane, did try to absorb the costs or tried to prevent price hikes on consumers. But in a lot of industries, as the tariff stayed in place, they did have to kind of make that decision to charge higher prices to customers. So that's what we're going to be dealing with now as companies across the economy and across sectors of the economy look at these new tariff rates from dozens, of trading partners.
And meanwhile, some companies are getting refunds after the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs imposed in 2025. So will consumers get any of that money?
Unfortunately, so far, we are not seeing, these refunds go directly back into consumers' pockets. And there is some irony there, right, that these companies and American companies are going to be charged tariffs now at the same time that they're getting money back from that decision because of the Supreme Court. It's estimated about half of the refunds have gone out so far. A lot of companies have said that they will use that money that they're getting back to pay down debt that they incurred in part because of the tariffs, maybe to reinvest in the business, pay employees more. So you do have that going into the economy. But unlikely, Diane, if you are a consumer and you went out and bought something and it was charged a higher price, you charged a higher price because of tariffs, that company's not going to call you back and say, hey, come take some of your money back because we're getting refunds. So this is, the bottom line for a lot of consumers is there has been a cost to these tariffs. The Yale Budget Lab, the Tax Foundation, nonpartisan, they have estimated about $1,000 per household was the cost per year. It's estimated this current kind of tariff regime in place could be a similar cost. So this is ultimately going to be something that households see play out in the form of higher prices for a lot of goods, companies also too.
All right, Elizabeth Schulze, thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
The Carolina coasts are under another flood threat. Significant flooding is possible in parts of the southeast from Charleston to Wilmington. The region's been getting hit with heavy rain for days and is expected to last into the weekend. ABC News meteorologist Leslie Lopez is in Raleigh with the latest. Leslie?
We've had unrelenting rounds of rain. Right now it's pretty light at the moment, but rounds of rain have created opportunities for big, massive trees like the one behind me here to come down. The soil here is just so soft and soggy and saturated. You can see why these trees are coming down. And unfortunately, the threat for more heavy rounds of rain is not over yet. This morning, parts of North Carolina facing a multi-day flash flood threat after heavy rain pummeled the region. As much as 5 inches of rain falling in 24 hours in the central part of the state. One tree crushed this vehicle outside Charlotte, trapping a father and child inside. Trevor Tompkins helped pull them to safety.
I had to fight through the trees. I was standing on top of that branch that was behind the car. We pulled him out, and everyone's okay.
An oak tree also crashed into this Raleigh home, shattering windows and punching through the roof. That same system bringing deadly flooding to West Virginia earlier this week, killing at least 2 people. Search and rescue crews still working to clear debris and reopen roads.
Hey, there's a car.
Oh my God, no! This as we are seeing new images of destruction. A car in Buckhannon sucked underneath a bridge by raging floodwaters. And in Weston, a hotel lobby filled with feet of muddy water. Meanwhile, overnight, Bertha dying off after making a second landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border. Now, Diana, it looks like there'll be more rounds of heavy rain anywhere from North Carolina to South Carolina. Flood watches will remain in effect all the way through Saturday. And people here, we're looking around, the danger just not over yet.
Leslie Lopez, thank you. And ABC News Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z is tracking that flash flood threat. So, Ginger, what are you watching right now?
Yes, so now it has sunk south just a little out of most of North Carolina into South Carolina. But see, Wilmington's still in there. Myrtle Beach, Charleston, all in a level 3 out of 4. Today, the 3-inch per hour rainfall rates are possible as this cold front kind of sinks and becomes very slow moving. So you'll see rounds of rain. It won't be all at once, but you could see some of those produce really high rain totals. If you're even going to the beach, say tomorrow afternoon, we stop the clock at 4 p.m. There are scattered showers all the way through Saturday afternoon, and that's why we anticipate anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of rain falling in some of the areas shaded in red, and some places could even see more than a half foot yet. So yes, those flood watches are still on. There is some silver lining to this whole event, though, because out of the whole southeast, North Carolina and South Carolina were still areas that desperately needed rain. This is the drought monitor, updated yesterday. Still 28% of the state of North Carolina is in that second highest level, which is called extreme. So this should help, and we'll see the update next week. Then let's talk about where they could very much use rain. This is Oregon, where we've seen dozens or several fires burning. This one's called the Roe Creek Complex Fire. There are evacuations in effect right now. The containment's at 31%. It's burned more than 150,000 acres. And it was hot earlier this week, still warm, and then look at the heat building all the way to Billings. Daily records possible this weekend. Saturday at 104. Rapid City could go to 106. Denver, records possible down into Texas. And then when you slide that east, there are some new alerts that are up from Minnesota to Iowa, because when you add humidity, it is going to be so steamy. Kearney, Nebraska, the corn sweat, that's a real thing as you have evaporation from the agriculture, right? 115, it feels like there on Sunday. Kansas City, same number. Chicago creeping up to almost 100. Then let's go to San Diego, where it's been warm and then extreme heat in Southern California's valleys. They have a beach hazard statement, though. So if you're headed out to the ocean, know this. You could see high surf upwards of 7 feet and rip current. That rip current risk is high at all the Los Angeles area beaches, too. And that is because of Hurricane Fausto. We have a lot going on in the Pacific Ocean, another chance of development back here, but Fausto going toward Hawaii, and the timing is through the weekend into early next week. It looks like it would only be a tropical storm at best, but still something we'll be watching. Diane.
Ginger Z, thank you. And now to a sightseeing plane crash near Seattle. Watch as the plane scrims across the ocean, then slams into rocks and bursts into flames. All 11 people on board survived. Trevor Alt has more on how.
This morning, dramatic new video of the terrifying moment that tourist float plane crashed along Washington State's coast near Seattle. The plane skimming low over the water before heading straight into the rocky shoreline. That smoking de Havilland Otter seaplane disabled on the rocks.
Just stay there!
Its nose in the air as passengers race to escape the cabin, climbing to safety as Good Samaritans rush in to help.
Oh my gosh!
Then flames erupting from the aircraft's engine, fire quickly swallowing the plane.
Most likely what happened was the tanks were breached as the airplane augered in, and what you saw was an ignition point.
The Coast Guard and local emergency responders racing to the scene. Authorities say the 10 passengers on board and the pilot all survived, but several were hurt, including one person now in critical condition. Officials say that Kenmore air flight took off at 4:30 p.m. from Lake Union Thursday for a scenic flight tour bound for Roche Harbor on San Juan Island. It crashed at 5:15 p.m. Investigators are now working to determine what forced the pilot to attempt an emergency landing in Shallow Bay on Susha Island. Kenmore Air CEO says in a statement, "We are grateful that everyone aboard has been accounted for, and our immediate focus is ensuring our passengers and pilot receive the care and support they need," and say they are fully cooperating with the investigating authorities.
The fact that all 11 people got out and the fire indicates not only that there were a lot of boaters around who immediately jumped in to help, but also the resilience of this type of airplane.
Now, officials say some of those passengers suffered head injuries, lacerations, even some broken bones, but just incredible that all 11 people on board were able to survive that initial impact of that rough landing. Back to you.
Trevor Alt, thank you. Coming up, a stabbing spree in Manhattan, what the suspect allegedly said before the attack that has police investigating it as a possible hate crime.
I fell so in love with this city that I decided to improvise and stay an extra day at the last minute. I found out that that night was a secret party in the old town. I really wanted to go, but I panicked. I had to change my flight, find a hotel, let my family know. How will I get back later if I didn't have internet? That's when I remembered. My holofly eSIM has always on. 1 GB of backup already included that renews every month. Don't let logistics take away your best memories. Stay connected even when plans change.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, the teen charged in a deadly Georgia school shooting's back in court today. Officials say the 16-year-old killed 4 people and injured several others in the mass shooting at Appalachian High School. He previously pleaded not guilty, but that could change today as he faces a judge for a non-negotiated plea and sentencing hearing. And a suspect is in custody after stabbing spree in Manhattan. Police say the suspect shouted Allahu Akbar before 2 separate attacks on the Upper West Side. Both victims are expected to survive. Now police say they're investigating them as possible hate crimes. ABC's Aaron Katursky has more on those stories.
In broad daylight Thursday afternoon, police said the suspect randomly stabbed 2 men in their 50s on Manhattan's Upper West Side after shouting Allahu Akbar, leading investigators to consider whether this was a hate crime. One of the victims is Asian, who was stabbed in the back with a knife. The other victim is Jewish and had just stepped outside a synagogue when he was stabbed in the chest with a screwdriver. A UPS driver who saw what happened followed the suspect for several blocks. Police then took 51-year-old Raul Morales into custody. In addition to a possible hate crime, the police commissioner said the suspect's mental health may have been a factor. Both victims are stable now in the hospital.
Aaron Katursky, thank you. And the mayor of Madison, Wisconsin, has identified the man killed in Wednesday's police shooting as Corey Ruiz. Police say Ruiz fell off a bicycle while trying to get away from officers, then pulled a knife when they confronted him. Now some are questioning whether that shooting was excessive force, and the mayor's promising a rigorous investigation. Pierre Thomas has that story.
Overnight, a community mourning the death of Corey Ruiz, a black man fatally shot during a violent encounter with police. The vigil coming only hours after a bizarre moment when city leaders tried to provide an update to the community about Ruiz's death.
Because we don't want to hear anything you've been saying.
A man spewing anti-Semitic and anti-capitalism views suddenly emerges from the audience and literally takes the microphone from the Madison police chief. The tense moment came as the city grapples with Ruiz's death, which is raising the searing questions of race and policing. ABC News reviewing multiple videos showing what took place. Police were responding to reports of a man checking the doors of parked cars Wednesday afternoon. Officers spotting him, but police say he took off on a bike. They catch up with him roughly a half hour later. Police say he pulled out a fixed blade knife. Officers trying to tase him, but police say they were unsuccessful. The struggle continues with the man ending up on the ground on his side. Then 3 shots fired. Ruiz pronounced dead at a local hospital. Part of the controversy, police in Madison typically do not wear body cameras.
I understand the very strong emotions that people are feeling. I am feeling them too.
The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave, and the police chief says that an independent investigation has been launched by the state. Back to you.
Pierre Thomas, thank you. Coming up, an inspiring story taking us into a Washington, D.C. boxing gym with the director of They Fight wants kids to take away from this movie. Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, a new movie from ESPN's Andscape is taking us inside the boxing gym for an inspiring true story. They Fight tells the story of Walt Manigan, an ex-convict who turned around his life by mentoring and coaching teen boys at a struggling D.C. youth boxing gym. Take a look.
You walked him in here. I'm expecting you to help me train him. Coach, I ain't no damn babysitter. I know who you are. You got no home, nowhere to go, But this gym keeps calling you.
Slim say you used to be great.
Nobody remembers the corner man, just the fighter.
Now They Fight's available to stream on Hulu and Disney Plus, and the director of the film, Sheldon Candace, is here to tell us all about it. Sheldon, thanks so much for coming on. Congrats on the film.
No, thank you very much. I mean, we climbed all the way to #1, Hulu's top 15 on the opening. So
huge. You must be beaming. So happy for you. So this story was featured in a 2018 documentary. What made you want to make it into a movie?
You know, I saw Andrew Renzi's documentary that he made that was adapted from the Michael Minahan Washington Post article, and it just deeply inspired me. And I said, wow, if I ever got the opportunity to adapt this story, there's a really wonderful Karate Kid narrative punched in the face with a John Hughes coming-of-age story. Yeah.
Such a great way to put it. You say that this is the first film that focuses on kids boxing. What do you think audiences will find most surprising about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, you know, this idea of like the headgear and the oversized gloves. You know, it's just a beautiful thing that for me, this movie is like a love letter to all the old rec centers and like mentors that we got as kids. Yeah.
And Sheldon, I also want to say I'm so sorry for your loss. I know Isaiah Whitlock, who also played Clay Davis in The Wire, was cast in this movie, but he passed away as you were starting to shoot. What was it like to deal with that and try to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where, you know, thank God for Wendell Pierce, right? I mean, Wendell Pierce is known for historically doing this legendary performance of Death of a Salesman. And I said, Wendell, you came and made this movie and turned it into Death of a Boxing Gym, you know, for all of my classic theater heads. And for Isaiah to be missing, you know, it was really, really tough to have that connection and be so excited to make a movie with him. I mean, Isaiah in his own right was a tour de force of a performer. So, yep.
What do you hope people take away from this film?
You know, at the end of the day, it's about Gladwell's The 10,000 Hours. And I just want to communicate to young boys and girls because, you know, during this process of barnstorming gyms and going in with Coach Waheed in Philly and Coach Lamont Roach in DC, No Excuses, and Upton Boxing Center in Baltimore with Coach Calvin Ford and Coach Josh Powell, I went into those gyms and I was meeting boys and girls, and I would meet a kid. I'm like, how old are you? I'm 10. Well, how long have you been boxing? Since I was 4. So meeting kids that have been boxing more than half their living lives. And I just want this to reverberate and echo to kids all throughout the country that, hey, you know, you can put the work in, and it's not an if your dreams will come true, it's only when.
All right, Sheldon Candace, we appreciate it. Sounds like this dream for you is very much coming true. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And you can stream They Fight right now on Disney and, on Hulu and Disney Plus. I'm Diane Macedo. The news never stops, and neither do we. We have a lot more news right after the break. Stay with us.